Hi, Oliver Berkquist here, and I'm joined with Rupert Miles. Rupert, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure, Ollie.
So Rupert is the owner of Sandler Training Essex. Sandler is the world's largest sales training organisation, and Rupert's been in business quite a few years, and I think your insight today, mate, is going to be fantastic.
Hope so.
And really, thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
So, the way the podcast works, I'm going to cover a few questions just to get into
Far ahead.
Business, your inspirations, your motivations.
Okay.
So, looking forward to hearing what you've got to say. Always like to start with, what's your first job after uni?
Okay, so
college?
it's slightly embarrassing this. I'm surprised you don't know, but maybe you do, and just for the purpose of the podcast, you want to tell everyone. I got chucked out of university when I was 20. So I had all the glittering prizes. Cambridge University, thought it was all going to be easy from then on. Do the milk round, get the graduate entry, and off you go into whatever career. And then complete dead end, and they said, right, that's it. And so I'm out on my own, literally. My parents weren't talking to me for obvious reasons. And so I went and got a job in London. And I did the only job that somebody who's completely unqualified can do, which is cold calling. And so I got a job in Baker Street, cold calling advertisers for a charity brochure. There you go. That's how it all started.
So, you and I know each other. Cold calling is my nemesis.
You hate it, I know. Yeah.
Cold calling is my nemesis. Did you like? What was it like cold calling?
No,
then?
it's tough.
Or were you just like new rookie on the block? So I'm just going to cold call. It don't matter.
Look, Ollie. Anyone who says they like cold calling doesn't do it. Okay,
yeah.
It's properly tough. And in fact, the cold calling I did was scripted. I tried varying the script, but that didn't work. The people who'd written the script had worked out what worked and what didn't. But I found that if you got the right behaviours, and we'll talk about this later, but you got the right behaviours, in other words, you stuck at it, and you kept your tonality right, you kept your pacing right, didn't rush it, you got comfortable with the material. Actually, I was bizarrely rather good at it. And I did it for about 4 months, and my whole career since then has been accidental on the back of that one job, because I got a job at a local newspaper selling advertising space face-to-face, and the rest, they say, is history. So yeah, what an accidental event that was.
Yeah, but do you know what though? I think life and circumstance, the way fate plans out, sometimes
it can do.
It falls into place, you know.
Yeah.
And for me as well, is if something happens, it's trying to see a positive in the situation. I know we've had chats about this before.
Absolutely.
You know, we're both quite generally positive people and stuff, so we look at things in a positive way. But I'm always thinking, right, if something bad happens, how can I learn from it? How can I deal with it and move forward? So I think that some circumstances, and maybe it wasn't your ideal job, but do you know what? If it's stepping stones to get to somewhere better,
you're very good at this, Ollie. You always say there's two outcomes. It's either a success or it's a lesson. And I think that if you approach life with, look, this is the opportunity I've got at the moment, just make the most of it. Don't be a passenger. Don't be a kind of bystander. If you're stuck in a quite a hot, crowded office in Baker Street, having to read cold call scripts all day, just do it to the best of your ability. And guess what? You do learn. And I did learn, and it helped me enormously. So yeah, I completely agree with you.
Yeah, no, it's great. So with your business, you know, so you've been in business quite a few years, and this is why I was really excited about us having a conversation. You know, first of all, you know, I really respect you, and you've been a help to me in certain ways, and we're working together now.
Yeah.
What's your best business successes you've had so far to date?
Do you know, that's a really tough one, because actually any success that I might have had has normally been where I've been in the right place at the right time. I've tried to take full advantage, but I've normally stood, as I think it's Isaac Newton said, I've stood on the shoulder of giants. In other words, I've succeeded because of the people around me rather than anything necessarily that I've done. I think I don't know, looking back at what would be a lasting legacy. I'm not sure I've got any legacy moments at the moment, but the one I'm most proud of and get reminded of every day is that I got an opportunity to launch the BBC's online services. So this is 1995. The world didn't know anything.
No, internet was
anything
just about to come.
Well, World Wide Web was, people called it the interweb thing. And I was running the biggest magazine in the country, it still is, and the most profitable is called Radio Times, that you'll have heard of. And in magazine publishing terms, that was the pinnacle of publishing. And I gave that up for the opportunity to launch the BBC's web services. And everybody at the time, almost to a man or a woman, said, "You're bonkers. What is this thing? It's never going to be big," all sorts of negatives and everything. And for some reason, and I don't know why, just the moment but I discovered the internet in America in about 93, 94, and so I spent a year and a half, whilst I was being paid by Radio Times, finding out about it. And so I threw myself in, and to me, it was the moment I saw how it worked. And I can remember the first time I went online, I had some people might remember this if you're old enough. I had a dial-up modem, which is ding, 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 and it was 28 kilobits, not megabits, 28 kilobits per second. It took 40 minutes to download. The only website I knew about was Club Med. They had a website to market their holidays, very kind of advanced at the time. So I downloaded this Club Med logo, and I suddenly thought, this is it. If my terminal, my laptop, my computer can talk to any computer in the world, the whole game changes. And in that moment, I thought, this is it. And so I became an evangelist for the internet. So by the time the BBC started looking, I was working for the BBC at the time, so it helped. But by the time I started looking for somebody to launch their service, I was in the kingdom of the blind. I was the one-eyed man. I nobody else could see anything. I could see a bit. So it's great. It was a great opportunity.
But I love that. And see, for me, that's great because it's taking opportunity as well.
Yeah.
So what I mean by that is, internet's not even out. So it's this unknown thing. You're seeing it in America.
Yeah.
Couple of years, but you're taking the foresight to go and do that, learn about it, so that suddenly, when something comes around, hand up, you're at the front there to get a great job like that's amazing. I mean, doing that for BBC's.
Yeah, I got lucky. Fantastic. So that's what I meant. So I'm on the shoulder of giants. So I was riding on the back of a BBC brand. I used to phone people up anywhere in the world. I'd say I was from the BBC. I was talking about internet. So, doors just opened. So I didn't have that difficulty.
No, I get luck. I do get luck.
Yeah.
I do get luck. And this is a really interesting thing, playing football, playing sport like
Absolutely.
I did. Everyone go, you're lucky and you end up in the right place at the right time. But you do make your own luck with things. So, I think I'll work very hard when I used to play.
Yep.
I weren't necessarily the quickest. Even laugh about it, but I was slow. But but I'd work. No, I was, but I'd work hard, and then if things happened in a game, you're reading of a game, it fell to you. To me, it was like opportunity or working really hard. So there's something around that, So you work hard. Yeah, lucky breaks. We all need lucky breaks or whatever. But there's some fate around it. I don't know. Guys, whatever you want to call it, but there's something around that hard work that leads to an opportunity that some might call lucky. But
you've got to be in there to take advantage of the opportunities, and that means getting up early. It means working hard. It means for all the things and there are a few things I've been lucky, like other things I won't bore you with at the time, at the moment. But for all the opportunities you get, there's loads of opportunities that haven't worked out. You just and we talk about this a lot. You've got to overcome fear of failure. It's what keeps people grounded. It's what means that they don't commit to doing what they kind of think should be right, but they're really worried about the negative outcome. And having really positive self-talk, not being arrogant, not being I can do anything, but actually being really focused on the positive outcomes of things, it tends to lead towards those outcomes. Just as I think I'm going to get hurt, or I think I'm going to get damaged by this, that tends to lead to it as well. But at the end of it, and your previous guest, Dan, your partner in a previous podcast, said the same, you've just got to put in the hours, you've got to put in the effort, you've got to be there. As Woody Allen said, 90% is turning up. And people sit there thinking, why aren't I getting the opportunities? And they're sat there expecting them to come to them. Well, wake up. It's never going to happen like that. So get out there, explore it, learn. I mean, we might talk about this later, but I think the thing with me is I'm fascinated by all sorts of other stuff. Yeah. So these random events come because there's no way I would have got the job at the BBC if I hadn't spent 18 months. And I spent a lot of time, I spent my own money, I travelled to America, I travelled to France, see some of the latest electronics being developed there. I just became my own expert at it. That's how it works.
That's it, and I think you're not doing yourself discredit, and I don't mean it like this, but where you say you got lucky at BBC, that's not because you're investing time, you're putting yourself out there, like you said, you're putting in the hours, you've gone to America, you've put money behind it, so you've done things to get that opportunity.
Yeah.
You're sat at your house, sat in your room, and the BBC rung. It's just that circumstance of life that has just led that call to come in.
Absolutely.
And you were ready.
Absolutely.
So I think, fantastic point made, I really do, and I think
Yeah.
that's a really good thing from...
And that was all from the question, what was my biggest business success? I'm not
that's
sure
what I like.
it was, but it's the one I get reminded of every day, because we all use the BBC and in the iPlayer and things like that. I was the first person to present to John Burt, the then Director General, the concept of iPlayer. It was fascinating, absolutely great stuff.
But to me, so I look at, what's the biggest success to date, from my perspective, but I look at things that have shaped me to get there, and I'll come back to your point in a minute. So for me, I think when I won the league title, say, playing football for, say, Canvey, a great achievement. The year before, we lost on the last day. So you get the disappointment, and that hurts like hell, and then the success of winning. So that, you're talking like mid-noughties, you're looking 03, 04, okay? So 15 years ago. But you remember these moments in time because they do shape you.
Of course
they do lead to things. So, success, failures, I've said too, but it's that then leads to other things. So my point, going back to where it's relevant to you, is you did this in the early 90s when internet wasn't around. You went and did that. It is a great success to date because it's led you now to run business like you have, and to now own Sandler where you're at. So it is relevant from that because it's a platform to other things. So biggest challenge about being in business? Have you had any failures that you can highlight that have maybe hurt then helped, or because we spoke about this learn, win or learn?
Yeah, I worked out the other day I'd probably spent comfortably north of £100 million of shareholder money that disappeared into the ether on various ventures, joint ventures and startups and launches. So I know how to fail. I think the important thing is that you fail quickly. In other words, don't hold on to something forever and a day if it's not going to work. Just move on. I think if lessons learned from stuff like that, I just think that you've got to have an attitude which is based on failure not being the outcome. It's where we were saying earlier about lessons learned. My first big failure was launching a Sunday newspaper with a bunch of colleagues. We raised, then at the time it was quite a lot of money, it was about 19 million pounds. We did a second round of fundraising. In total we raised 27 million pounds. The newspaper lasted for just over a year, and I was the director. I was late 20s, and so it's a big opportunity for me, but it ended in disaster. The problem for me is I'd recruited something like 60 people to work in this newspaper. So I'd started off with a desk, and within 4 months I had 60 people running my department. So crisis time, but actually it turned out to be one of the absolute best lessons, which I put into practice several times since, which is the first commitment is to the people you've employed. And so we went through a learning curve which got every single person employed at that newspaper in a job within 3 months. And that was a personal challenge to me, which was great. So it proved it could be done. A lot of them went into better jobs, frankly. They'd used their experience there because they had gained a lot of experience to grow. So even in the darkest times, there's always another opportunity. And you have to remember that, because when it's really dark, it's difficult to see anything. Your world's falling apart. A lot of people are looking at you thinking, you got me into this, you got to get me out. And my last job, ironically, the shareholders said exactly the same thing to me, that they wanted to close the company, not sell it. They wanted to close it. It's a joint venture. They couldn't agree with each other, the future of the company. That was their right to do that. But I had 250 people working for me. So I had to close the company over 18 months. And actually the experience I had at the Sunday Correspondent, the newspaper, was exactly what I built on to do it. So these things, they come round, they work at it. And, you've got a choice. Either decide to kind of, hide and head and cut up into a ball, which is very tempting, or you think, actually, just like you said, you've got the muscle memory of having gone through this. And that's incredibly important. Yeah. It's like fitness. You can tell people in the gym who are older, who've done some kind of training in the past, because they've got a kind of muscle memory to the way they do stuff. And that memory is really valuable, even if at the time it feels like it's a complete disaster. It'll come right in some way and you'll use it. So failures, lots of them. Learn a lot. Very valuable now.
Of course.
With all the failures. Yeah.
So going on to habits, it's a really key one. And actually your last point, you're just talking about people in the gym, people. And this is, I think, so creating this podcast was a fascinating thing for me, because to talk to business owners is great.
Yeah.
Obviously, the clients I'm working with, like yourself, and so success leaves clues, and successful business people have the success habits, but they might not have their lifestyle habits in place.
No.
But there are habits in place. So it always fascinates me to find out what are your top daily habits.
Okay. What, morning, noon, and night?
Yeah, tell me your top daily ones that work for you.
I have a lot of habits, as you know, from working together. You training me and me training you, so it's kind of a good relationship from that point of view. Habits, in my view, are intentional, and by that I mean that if you're unintentional about your habits, they tend to be bad habits. No one sets out to eat a bar of chocolate every night. They don't sit down and write in their diary, this is going to be one of my habits. They kind of fall into it for whatever reason. Whereas intentional habits built up over time can be really positive. And as we've discussed many times, those habits actually don't need to be, in the first instance, too significant. They can be real micro habits. But the important thing is consistency and getting a regular routine that creates the habits. And we can argue about whether it's 20 days, 60 days, or whatever. But in my experience, so you've taught me a habit, for example, which, as you said to me, as part of the nutrition side of the fitness program you're putting me through, get up in the morning and have a glass of lemon juice. And actually, to begin with, I thought, I've kind of forgot to do it several times, and then I reinforced it. Then I did it. Now, I cannot imagine anywhere, at any stage, holiday or whatever, not starting to be negative.
Slice of lemon, it goes in there with your hot water.
Whole lemon.
Yeah.
Scream around. I think of Oliver. Yeah, there we go. And lemon juice. So, and that's a silly example, but the beauty of it is that it's at a set time of day. It's something I do. It's the first thing I do after getting showered and brushing my teeth. But the first thing I do in the kitchen is I don't make a cup of coffee, nothing like that. It's the lemon juice. So it's a simple habit. You tell me it's good for me, I'm sure it is, but I do it, okay? Always do what you tell me to do. And other habits, things like reading. There are certain things which I believe are incredibly important to develop your mental health and to keep yourself outward focused. The trouble is when we get stressed at work or anything, we tend to go inward. And we start kind of concentrating on the problem as we perceive it. So things like, I've just got to do more calls, I've got to get out more often, I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And actually, in the process of doing that, we lose our external focus. So we lose our ability to kind of worry about other people, we lose our ability to develop our own thinking, our own ideas, and everything else like that. So having daily habits, which force you in the sense that they are daily and they are habits, and you always do them, just like you would brush your teeth, I do a minimum, regardless of the day, of half an hour's reading. Yeah. I could do technical stuff, but I don't really count that because of the job I do. So from your point of view, I know you read a lot, and you do a lot of reading for to keep your skills up. And I completely subscribe to that, so you sharpen the saw. But I would encourage, and it works for me, read other stuff. Because it's what I call serendipity, that kind of accidental discovery you get of just dipping into a magazine or picking up a random book, and just being exposed to ideas you wouldn't otherwise be done. And one of the problems with people's consumption of particularly social media is you can now edit that so that you channel the content to your interests and your enthusiasms, which is fine, but recognize the goldfish bowl you're in.
Yeah.
All you're in is an echo chamber for the same ideas.
Yeah.
So put yourself out of your comfort zone. And I do, for at least half an hour, I read something that I can't stand. I'll read the Daily Telegraph. I used to work for the Guardian for 10 years, that sums me up. I can't stand the Daily Telegraph, but it actually does trigger me.
Yeah. And
and stuff like that.
Triggers are important, actually. And I'll bring up in a minute, but just going back to your reading, and this is an interesting one, because I say non-fiction or something not relevant to maybe your work of reading, and I get that totally. The challenge is for me, I love what I do.
Yeah.
So
completely.
For me, in the evening, which I try and get my last task in the evening is to read, to relax. When I read something about business or fitness, I really enjoy it.
Absolutely. So I completely get
that.
So
it's just really hard. But for those maybe, and this is the relevance to, which I love about the podcast, that people are listening in business. The relevance is that if a business owner or someone in business doesn't like their job, say, and it's a successful job, they don't like it and they're earning the money, then actually to read something non-related to their industry works perfectly. I know you enjoy your job, so it's a bit different, but I feel that's relevant, just to read, to break the cycle from maybe a job they don't enjoy, but it's paying bills and it's successful for them. So, reading, we both agree with reading as an advocate for that.
Reading and writing. So one of the other habits, and we both do this, I know, is journaling. So every day, morning and evening, writing in a journal. We haven't got time in the podcast to describe what that effectively means, but the process of actually writing, and the reason why writing is incredibly important, and I don't mean typing, I don't mean putting in a keyboard, I mean physically writing, is it occupies the left brain. So actually the act of writing is a rational exercise which keeps your left brain occupied, which means that when you're thinking of ideas and you're trying to think of different ways of doing things, writing it keeps the left brain out of it, so you cease to become predictable, rational, and you go much more into the right side, which is the creative, more emotional side, and then the ideas will flow. So having that habit, and it can only be 5-10 minutes, I don't know how long you take, but maximum 10 minutes a day, just to write down how you're feeling, what you're going to do that day, what makes a good day for you, gratitudes, what you're happy about, reinforcing, not in some kind of hippie type way, but just recognizing the brain doesn't know the difference between negative and positive. It just takes statements. So if it takes a statement that I am bad or I am good, it makes no distinction between the two, it just accepts it.
Yeah. And I think,
so you need to reinforce those on a daily behaviour, the positive attributes that you have.
Yeah, and I totally agree. And I think with the journaling, for example, it's, say something's happened in the day, and this is where it's been valuable for me, and we've spoke about it, we're both advocates of journaling and stuff. In a week's time, you forget it.
Yeah.
If something's happened that day, you forget it.
Yeah.
So by writing it down, and I've gone one step better now, like literally, I'll finish. Something bad happens. I've made a mistake. I've done something wrong in a meeting. I write it down straight away. I debrief. So I debrief on everything I do.
Great.
Straight away.
Great.
Because I forget. If I arrange an appointment, it's straight in the diary. If someone's given me something to do, it's written down because I forget.
Great.
I'm human.
Ollie.
I'm human.
What a difference a couple of years makes.
I know, mate. Well, listen.
Excellent. Excellent.
I will talk about at the end. Just. How you've really helped me, and which I'm grateful for. Yeah. But going back to that, and I think this is by getting it down, you don't forget, and it's a great way, I think, of improving. Going back to the learning from mistakes and stuff. So that's where it's really valuable. And so with morning and evening routines, so this links into habits. So I'm fascinated by morning and evening routines.
Yep.
Could you share with me your morning and evening routine?
If you want to, it's reasonably personal. So I
The
get
bits
up.
you can share, obviously.
Yeah, I get up. No, it's all above board. Something might make you squirm, but you did ask. I get up at 4:45 every morning. Some people would balk at that. I've done this ever since I was a school kid. I did all my homework was done between 4:30 and about 6:30 every morning. Because I was just too tired at night. You could say one leads to the other, but that's the way it worked for me, and I kind of got through it. So I get up at 4:45. After I've got showered and dressed, I do my lemon juice. I sit down with my journal. I write through that. I happen to read the Bible every day. That's my faith, and I also pray every morning. I then 3 days a week I come to you, which is 4D Fit. That's an hour's worth of, for me, is a fantastic building block to my week and to my life. And one morning a week I go to a 6:30 network meeting. So obviously early mornings are pretty full on. I think Thursdays I kind of have a morning off. I still get up early and do the usual behaviours. So, but that sets me up for the day. By the time everybody else is thinking about kind of getting into gear, I've probably done in the region of about 2 to 3 hours of what I could call loosely preparation for my day.
What does that do for your... So having that done, say 8 o'clock, that's happened, what's that do for your productivity? And
Bulletproof.
Sort of wellness in the
I'm
brain?
bulletproof. I'm completely in charge of my day.
Yeah. I get it. I think that's huge.
Completely in charge. So, attitudinally, I'm a bit more organised than I might be if I just got out. That's fair. But this is more than just organisation. It's about aligning your approach to the day, making clear the things that you think. And in your journal, you'd write what makes today a success. So you know what today is going to bring.
I get that. So this is an interesting one because the last couple of days for me, I've had extra time. Wife and the kiddies have gone away with my mother-in-law for a little break. So whereas I'd have, say, family time, I've had extra time to work.
Yes.
Because I've written it down, I've seen. I've been productive in those days, but I was no more productive than when they're around.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting thing where you set up for your day.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't need as many hours.
No.
So you setting up in the morning, getting that right, you might have not done too many work tasks. But then when you get to your work tasks, those few hours, you're nailing them. And it's an interesting thing. I've done my morning routine as normal. I've nailed my tasks. Then I've tried to stretch out a little bit more because I've got the time to, and I haven't been productive.
No.
So I love the morning routine because for me, it's 3 hours before anyone started anything. Half an hour might be work related. But everything you've done it's going to make those work tasks better. You don't need I don't think you need lots of hours. I think there's peaks and troughs in the day. There's a time of day for productivity, time of day for flow, time of day for relaxation, because decision fatigue comes in. And so I think that's great. So this is talking about your evening routine. How is your evening routine? Because if you're nailed on in the morning and you're an early riser, how does that work for your evening routine?
Yeah, well, look, I've learnt over the years, and I've done what everybody else does, which is burn the candle at both ends. Go out. You're invulnerable, aren't you? I remember once being caught by my boss on the tube first thing in the morning, still in the dinner jacket that I'd said goodnight to him at the night before. Just done an all-nicer straight into work. So these things happen. Actually, in reality, I do need the sleep. So typically, I aim to go to bed about 10 o'clock. I've become increasingly less enamoured of sitting watching telly and all that kind of good stuff. I tend to kind of read, have chat to Bev, have something to eat. My routine for finishing the day in terms of the journal is that I tend to journal as the last thing I do for my working day. It's the trigger point between work and home. And I think, like you, I could do a lot of work at home. And so this is my way of ring fencing that. So once I've finished the journal, whatever it is, 7:30, 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock, whatever the time is, that's it for the rest of the day. Then the rest of it is just downtime. So that's how I work. And then at night I pray as well. So, it gives me it ring fences the whole day in a kind of consistent way. And as you know, you and I talk about this a lot. What we owe ourselves, and fitness is very much part of it, and looking after your body is very much part of it. and looking after your mental health is incredibly important, because you get a lot of negatives. Life happens. It just does. Yeah. And anyone who thinks it's not going to go wrong is in some cloud cookie. It's going to go wrong. Just get over it. It's not going to work out the way you expect necessarily. But separating out what you and I would call our roles, so our roles as father, as trainer, as business person or whatever, being clear about those, and they can be good or bad. You have a great day, you have a bad day, but maintaining your sense of identity is separate from your roles. So whether you have a good day or a bad day, it doesn't alter your core identity. So building up those things that support your identity, like fitness, like training, like eating well, like sleeping well, like having good habits, is just reinforcing your power to do your role better.
I want that to happen. I want the spontaneity of you're saying something and triggering me to think about something, and vice versa. So that's perfect.
So I hope I'm getting enough messages in about 4D Fit.
And lovely. I think for me,
good stuff.
For me, it's like at some point, if people like the podcast, 10 episodes in, I will mention a bit more about the business and stuff. But at the moment, I'm enjoying doing these, chatting to people rather than. Come down to 40 Fit, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you do that as well. It's all part of the thing.
But cool. So, who are your personal heroes, and why do you hold them in such high regard?
Yeah, I that's a really tough one. So, living or dead?
Anything. Because the reason I asked, because heroes can have an impact in many different ways.
Yeah.
So if they're past, they still have done things that might inspire and motivate you. Yeah. So whatever works.
I've got a whole pantheon of heroes. It's very, very difficult to select. But when I think about, if I was thinking historically, I would go. Admiral Lord Horatio Nelson. I was struck. In my view, if it's greatest living or greatest ever Briton, I'd put him at the top. And I don't know whether you've ever visited the Maritime Museum in Greenwich, but you can see the coat that he was wearing when he was shot fatally at Trafalgar. And honestly, it's the size of a small child. This coat. This tiny man who used to get seasick. That's just incredible. Was this amazing hero, which we all know the story. But if you think of living ones, I've met a couple of them. Actually, I've got lots of heroes. I think I'm kind of a bit of a hero kind of groupie because. But a couple that I met, Robin Knox Johnson, round the world sailor. First man to circumnavigate the world on his own.
In what ways is he hero?
Well,
is it just his feet, or is there anything in particular that just struck you?
It's everything about his whole life story. He built the boat himself that circumnavigate. These were in our world where everything's made for you and it's all sponsored, it's all high tech. And I admire people like Ellen MacArthur, who's 5'1" and bounces up a mast in force 9 gale, banging away, has to wear Kevlar body armor to stop herself being bashed to death up the top. These are people who have an ability to exert that mind over matter thing. She's not strong. I went sailing with Robin Knox Johnson at the time. He was 68. He was bouncing around this boat like a kind of 20-year-old. And was his body 68 years old? Of course it was. And all the aches and pains you'd expect of a 68. There's nothing kind of physically different about him. It was all in the mindset. Same with... I had a long dealings with Ranulph Fiennes, the Arctic explorer, and he was telling me some of the stories. And you can read the books; you don't have to be told directly. But these people have an ability to transcend their apparent physical limitations to an extent. So I find people that massively inspirational. But the
mindset element, fascinating, is amazing. Sport. Business, whatever.
Absolutely.
We're going back to like when things don't go well, how you can transform it. It's just through your mindset. I know there's behaviours, I know there's daily habits, and all of this stuff, but you need to be tuned in. Look at all of these people that you're talking about, or people that have been there and done it, you know, Usain Bolt, sports people, you know,
Yeah.
you criticise these people for whatever you want to, but they have got some mindset is absolutely phenomenal,
Yeah.
unbreakable.
Yeah.
They'll have insecurities like everyone does. They'll have struggles, but that won't waver.
Yeah.
That's why they're there, get to successful. So I think it fascinates me, and it fascinates me in business as well. With business, having these conversations. But that's amazing. The people you've met there.
Well, no, as I say, I've been quite lucky. But so hard work will always trump talent. I think Dan said that last time. I completely believe that. If talent's not working. These people have talent, you know. You can't say Usain Bolt isn't naturally gifted in some respect, but he wouldn't be what he is. So the ability to transcend your circumstances, it starts with the behaviours. It starts with turning up to the training track at 4 o'clock in the morning on a rainy morning in Gateshead and doing the necessaries. Whatever you don't win on the Olympic track. You win, in those horrible moments when you just don't want to do it. But those people inspire me, and that's why I've got hundreds. There's loads of people, I would hope to meet one day. But there's one other person who inspires me as well. It's a different form of courage. This guy called Jordan Peterson. Now, I'm not saying, if you know Jordan Peterson, that he is someone whose views I 100% believe in, but he wrote a book called The 12 Rules of Life. And you can go onto the kind of YouTube, see the videos of him. He's all over the place, quite controversial character. But the reason why I admire him is because he's used his intellect, and he is undoubtedly a big intellect, to argue the case for things that are becoming increasingly off limits in terms of subjects. So argue the case for why young men actually have rights, for example. And I think I admire people who, in really difficult circumstances where, it's very easy to be, and you look at social media, he's pilloried left, right, centre by a number of people, but who've actually stuck to what is an intellectually sound argument, whether you agree with it or not. So I admire people who are able to stand up against that kind of pressure and work on behalf of people, particularly young men, who I think, for what it's worth, they have it a lot tougher these days than I ever did. They're really difficult to navigate, all of the politics these days. So I admire people who are fundamentally courageous with whatever skills or talents they've got. And, I'd never be like that, but I can still look up to them.
Yeah, that's true. So, what advice would you give to the younger Rupert 20 years ago? What advice would you give to that person now? I would. If you could send a message to Rupert Miles in 1990.
Yeah, I would probably. I was very lucky because I worked for companies that invested in me, and so, for example, the BBC sent me to the Brawn Business School for several months, which even then cost more than £50,000. So I've had literally hundreds of thousands of pounds spent on training me. But actually, I believe, and I've come to believe, that achieving goals, it's necessary that you achieve your goals. And by that I mean, if you're in the corporate world, as I was, there are a lot of goals set for you. So there are all sorts of financial performance goals, all sorts of things. People set goals, and they pay you according to the achievements of those goals. So my advice to my younger me, and I would say to anyone in the corporate world, is make those goals your own. Yes, you've got to achieve those, and it's what you're paid to do, but redefine those goals so that they mean something to you personally. It's not just enough, and I did spend many years working very hard, I think excessively hard, to achieve other people's goals. And so my advice to my younger self would be, step away from it, work out what's important to you, fit those measures, whatever they are, into your total view, but create your own goals that will deliver those measures rather than just concentrate on the measures themselves. And part of that is whatever money you earn, whatever you are able to put aside, much as you might, invest in anything, you might put some money away in an ISA or something like that. Put the money into finding someone who can help you get better that you choose. Not just somebody sends you on a training course or sends you away, as I was lucky enough to do, to various residential things. But
so mentoring, like mentor.
Get a mentor, a coach, an advisor. Find the best you can afford. Warren Buffett, the investor, he famously, when asked, and he's a multi-billionaire, when asked what was the best investment you ever made, said, the investment in myself. And he still is everything we were talking about earlier. He still, on a daily basis, reads, learns. He gets people coaching him, mentoring. This guy's one of the richest guys on the planet, and he's still learning. And I think I was taught, I think I should have been more intentional about that. And so I would say, look, you've got time to really change your game. And as you know, within the matter of maybe 2 or 3 years, you can completely shift your life, but you've got to make the investment. And that's what I would have done more of that.
And I feel people sometimes are quite short-sighted with wanting things too quickly. So, for example,
absolutely, of course they do.
People come into the gym. People will come into the gym and they will want a quick fix.
Yep.
I'm not you guys.
Yep.
We're not you guys. If you want that, because for
Quite
me,
right.
the gym is about lifestyle transformation, transforming a lifestyle over a longer period of time.
Yep.
And it's the same and that to me how it's got to be. And it's the same in business. And like you said about Warren Buffett, he's looking at it in long term. So his long term approach has always been the same. Those habits, still doing them to be successful. You need a long term approach to anything.
Yeah. So the analogy I use is, imagine you're on the plane and the oxygen goes. You put the mask on yourself first. That's what they tell you to do, because then you can help others. And too often in business, too often in life, you're chasing other people's agendas. Step away, take a break, take a day out, whatever it takes. Just think, actually, what do I want? Invest in that. When you write your diary for the next year, put in all your holidays first. Put in the time that you're going to do training, coaching and supporting yourself. Do that first, then do the others.
So just from my perspective, mate, it's fantastic having you on.
Pleasure.
So
Enjoyed
just
it.
I want to give people a bit of context to yourself as well. You've helped me the last couple of years. We've built up a good relationship.
Great.
You helped me with some business and some habit and some other stuff. So thank you for that. And like your sales mastery stuff you do with Sandler is fantastic.
Thank you.
I'm a huge advocate. I'm obviously on your program. So call it a plug or whatever to what you do.
Yeah.
But I don't mind that because it's generally helped me. For me, I would only ever refer something that's worked and been
No,
good. I do. So
I know that.
genuinely from me, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks
Not
so
at
much
all.
for the help you've given me over the last couple of years. It's really been valuable. And for people that have listened that want to sort of find you, I know you're on LinkedIn. How could they get in touch with you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, easiest way, rupert.miles@sandler.com. But as you say, Rupert Miles Sandler on LinkedIn. You can get to it. And I'll do a kind of mini plug for you as well, Ollie. What we do here is transformational. It's, in my view, it does require the habits, the behaviours and everything else that we've talked about. But it works absolutely brilliantly for me. It's not sweaty gym, as I call it. It's very targeted, very personal, and long term is changing me dramatically. So, and as I said, it's part of my foundational behaviours. So thank you for that. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for coming on.
Not at all.
Cheers, Rupert.
Always a joy.
Thank you, mate.
Perfect.